Welcome to the Nikki Clarke Show. Happy New Year. It's 2025, and we're back in Burlington, taping live at a tech place, and I'm so excited to be here. So let me ask you in the audience, are you as excited to be here as I am? Make some noise. Amazing. Thank you so much. So you're here at the Nikki Clarke Show. Thank you for joining us. The show has been going on for over 16 years, and it's about transforming lives one story at a time. So people from all walks of life are invited to come and share their heart stories, their stories of transformation, how they have made the impact that they have been able to do, and share it here on the stage. So I am so excited to introduce the co-founder of the Inclusive Leadership Studio. Please put your hands together for Dr. Gena Chang Campbell to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Dr. Gena, it's such a thrill to have you here. And I'm going to say it again. You look amazing. I love the colors.
Thank you. I've got to match your frequency. Got to stay on the energy.
Absolutely. I love the glow from a little vacation time.
You caught me. Just got back last night. Fresh in.
I love it. Well deserved.
Thank
well deserved. You work very hard in the community. So I love to see leaders taking time for themselves.
Yes.
You know, as much as you give, it's great to see you give back to yourself.
Thank you.
So let's talk about, your origin story. How did you get inspired to start the Inclusive Leadership Studio?
Well, it's a long trajectory of working in leadership development. So I've been working in that area, I'd say formally for 20 years, but I mean, I remember being a 12-year-old and doing leadership development courses, which is very nerdy thing. But I realized—
Which ones did you?
It was through Scarborough, City of Scarborough Parks and Recreation.
Really?
I used to nerd out in the catalog, like, ooh, do they have leadership programs this term?
Amazing. I did brownies.
Did you?
That was my taste of leadership.
There you go.
As an 8-year-old.
You kind of get pulled. I think there's a calling for a lot of us. So I worked in very corporate arenas around that. Then academically as well. So I taught not in leadership per se. I was actually at York University for over a decade, and I taught there in Caribbean Studies, and I taught at what is now Toronto Metropolitan University as well.
Excellent.
So I was balancing the corporate world and the academic world for a long time. So I had some different views and perspectives and entryways into adult education, I'd say. And also was looking at what was going on with the development of leaders, both inside and outside the corporate world.
Right.
And I just found, there's a whole lot that's missing. And so a lot of that is actually the people that are missing from leadership roles and what they could bring to them. And so after a crazy near-death motorcycle accident in 2020, I thought, okay, I need to start taking more seriously this calling and how I can actually manifest and make this happen and stop kind of playing small and really step forward and see what could I bring to the table. Because I know I've gathered a lot of experiences over the years that I think could be really supportive of leaders that want to do better and be better.
Excellent. So with that, how do you inspire leaders to be the best they can be?
I think a lot of it comes from the background I have. So there's coaching, there's adult education, and really that leads me to take a much more facilitative approach. So I've also done corporate training for years. So I think one thing that kind of makes me a little bit different perhaps from others that might do this work is a lot of people kind of read about it and got into it and did it. Or a lot of people have lived experience and then do it. I have this myriad of a unique background whereby I know it and done it academically. I know it and done it corporately, but I have the lived experience of being someone, who's a racialized, now disabled woman as well, right? So you can look at all of the intersections of my identity. And so I have a way in which I can see it from the inside out. And my abilities to support people through a facilitative coaching method is really enriched by that. It kind of brings to bear my experiences, but then I take a complete step back. Recognizing as a professional coach, which I've been executive coach for many years, that people are whole, they're resourceful, they're creative. If you leave them the opportunity with, just asking them powerful questions and helping guide them and connecting them, sometimes in group sessions or workshops with other people, they create magic. Like we're all very capable of coming to amazing solutions ourselves.
Excellent. Excellent. So if someone were to come to you and they feel like they are kind of missing something in terms of their leadership style, how would you assess them, and what kind of coaching framework would you create for them?
Well, I'd first be really curious about, what makes you think that? What's led you to think that there's something missing from your style? And I think really all of this for me starts, any kind of successful leadership begins from self-awareness. We talk about things like emotional intelligence or being, an agile and transformational leader. There's a lot of buzzwords and trends around this stuff. If you are not I want to say, a radically self-aware person, not only will the stuff not come easily, it won't make sense and it just won't stick to the wall.
So that's the key ingredient is self-awareness.
Honestly and truly, I think you could take every course, get every, MBA on this. If you're not really aware of who you are and how you impact other people in the world, it's just not going to be a success as a leader.
Okay.
And so that's really where I'd want to start with someone, is how well do you know yourself? And, what we do at Inclusive Leadership Studio is take that in our multi-pronged approach. We begin with that radical self-awareness, doing different kinds of, exercises, assessments, pieces that help us dig into, well, who am I really? Because that's really, when I think about it, the coach training programs I've been through, Michael Jackson said it, you got to start with the man in the mirror. You got to look at who am I really and how am I coming across? And once you can be honest about that, then you can start to look at things like unconscious biases. And then you can start to look at things like, okay, so if I want X, what do I need to do to get there? Or if I want to influence or impact people in a certain way, how am I coming across to them? What parts of me do I need to leverage?
Right.
You need to know the parts of you and how they come across to do that effectively.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's really vital, in establishing who you are as a leader. So in your estimation, what makes a good leader? I think we talked about, one key ingredient, self-awareness. Whereas what other values do you think are important?
I think, as I was saying, that self-awareness is mandatory to then be that foundation for emotional intelligence. The more we talk about artificial intelligence, the more we're going to talk about emotional intelligence.
Okay.
Because, AI is amazing at amassing and, processing data, and yet can still get it wrong when choosing a candidate. And that's really, first of all, because, there's fallible humans that are putting the data in so that AI can create these algorithms. But there's also just, you can't really underestimate the power of a gut instinct of someone who has been radically self-aware. And I say those two things very much need to go together, because gut instincts can lead you down all kinds of biased paths that you're not aware of, your unconscious bias impacting that decision. But once you've really delved deep and looked at that and have worked to negotiate and interrupt and disrupt those, then you can learn to trust yourself. I think that's one of the greatest compliments someone can pay me at the end of a coaching session or engagement is, I feel like I really trust myself now. Because I think that's where a lot of decisions, especially in leadership, go wrong, is people not trusting themselves and wanting to maybe copy that pattern because it's status quo, or do like that person does because it worked for them.
How does some toxic traits come about from some leadership styles?
I think a lot of what I just said there, people feeling like there's a certain, cookie cutter way to get to the top, and I've got to follow that particular path and trajectory, or I'm not going to get there. And oftentimes that will involve, the old, I don't care who I step on the way to go up because I ain't coming back down. And that is just never going to be a sustainable way to lead anything, a team, a company, anything, right? That's eventually going to just come crashing down like the house of cards it is.
It's going to implode, absolutely. Yeah. Like a house of cards, for sure. Can you describe a success story, someone who's come to you and you've coached them, their before and after that you could describe? Sure.
So would you prefer like a personal example or a company?
Please. Yeah.
Okay. So I can think of one person actually really dear to me. And when she came to me, she was undergoing a lot at her workplace. So a lot of gaslighting. This is years ago before we really had the terminology to call it gaslighting.
Describe in layman's terms what gaslighting is for those who are not aware.
So really making someone feel as if they're imagining things. Like I'm experiencing some kind of discrimination or negative treatment. But when I tell you about it, you say, no, that's not what's happening.
No, you're being too sensitive.
Yeah, and I can attest to this. As a professional coach, I've received professional coaching from other coaches more than once where I've ended the engagement because they've done that to me. So if I'm experiencing that as a seasoned coach, who knows what's happening to, you know, a junior employee going for coaching in their company the first time. So yes, this particular young woman, she was experiencing, it got to the point of physical abuse, and ironically at the hands of another female employee, which made the gaslighting all the more potential to happen. Yeah, and so working through a lot of issues, and you know, she was also working with a therapist at the time, which I often tell people, I dispel them from the myth that I'm a corporate therapist, but I'm like, therapy works great in conjunction with coaching. And she really took that medicine well. She was working with both of us, and you know, with her therapist, she was dealing with, you know, some sort of past stuff that needed to be unpacked. And with me, then she could move forward. I loved it. She always scheduled us in a certain way, like therapy early week, coaching with Gena at the end of the week. Over time, we unpacked a lot of what was also leading her to not advocate for herself in that situation, ways in which she felt vulnerable and how she felt very trapped. And this was all happening to her in a very respectable, high-paying job where she was climbing that ladder really, really well, doing all the things. But again, as a young Black woman, there was a lot that was also stacked against her. And she would have those microaggressions happening in meetings that she, you know, duly noted weren't happening to others at that same table. And so after, I'd say it was probably close to a year of coaching, she did uproot herself, leave that role. And since then, she's had a number of progressive roles. And I will share, like, I think I've been coaching her probably over 5-6 years now. Yeah. And it's not continuous, because I would say coaching, you know, sometimes you have something you want to achieve, and then after 9 months, she's good, and I won't see her for a couple months, and then it's, you know what, I want to go for this new role. Maybe it's a career pivot or something else has happened in life, and we'll pick up and start again where we left off. Right. And that's the great thing about it, is it's goal and objective oriented, but it's always about the client's goal and objective. And so, you know, I've watched her go from sort of being a meek and vulnerable, gaslit, microaggressed young woman to someone who stands very strong on her own, who I'm, you know, supporting with developing her own entrepreneurial plan right now. And just, she's got her hands in lots of pies and is just really, really confident, really, really different person. And I think she's actually one of those people that I cherish. She said, "You helped me trust myself."
That is a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And now I'm curious, what is the outcome of the workplace that she left behind?
I don't know the details of that. I know it was a very typical outcome of, once someone like that leaves, you need at least 2 bodies to replace them. You realize just how much underwater, how much work they were actually doing that was not, you know, going rewarded. It was actually going, as I said, microaggress in the very opposite direction instead. And I think it was a got till it's gone moment.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So what's the vision for you for, you know, Inclusive Leadership Studios? Where do you see inclusivity and diversity? Where do you see it going? And where would you like to see it go?
So right now, it's in such a tumultuous place. And, you know, I'm not going to lie, we have US politics that's coloring a lot of that. And yet, you know, when I thought about this a month ago, I had less hope than I do a month later now, when we see different big companies standing up and stakeholders and boards advising people to vote against dismantling DEI, even though that's what's being asked for. And that's all south of the border. And that might seem like, well, Gena, why are you talking about American things? Because we're basically always looking down there, and their corporate trends impact us greatly. Right. And I find it's now not that dismantling DEI is a thing. It's that, I like to say, some people have an allergy to the term. So I don't use the term, because what we're talking about is inclusive leadership. What we're talking about is belonging and having diversity and actually having the right ingredients to create success and innovation in any kind of company in the world. Mm-hmm. If we want to put the term to bed, DEI, I mean, they're just words. The important thing to do is that we're still working on engaging all employees, irregardless of who they are, where they come from, what they've experienced in life. Because that's actually, and this is something I had to spend so much time in my corporate career doing, that's actually better for the bottom line.
Absolutely.
And I think, you know, for all the naysayers that want to dismantle it, you're literally shooting yourself in the foot. It makes no sense. And so if I think about a future of it, I mean, our vision at Inclusive Leadership Studio is really that there's going to come a day when that term will become redundant. Inclusive leadership won't be a thing. Thinking about DEI,
or a policy.
None of these things. And the companies that have done really well at it, and there are a few, it's become so embedded in their culture, they get to a point where they don't use words like inclusion anymore. It's just become who they are. It's their reputation on the street, in their company. You know, it shows in the talent pools that they're able to attract and retain. And it shows, again, in the innovation that they lead and their productivity and profit.
Absolutely, yes. So tell us any upcoming events or workshops that we should know about?
Oh, thanks for asking. We are about to kick off the pilot next Friday of Ignite Your Leadership. So
exciting.
That's a 3-week program, and it's nice, cozy group coaching. So smaller cohorts. Myself and my business partner, Amy L. Young, are both seasoned executive coaches, facilitators. We have a lot in common professionally. And I like to say, you know, I'm Dr. Gena, but she's the one with the master's in HR management. So between the two of us, and she's a Chinese-Canadian woman, we've lived it, breathed it, you know, been in all the corporate, we get all the things, but we also know where you're coming from both sides, any side of the table just about. And so in this program, we're using group coaching sessions, which by their nature are very different from a corporate typical workshop, because they're going to be absolutely private and confidential for those that are in those cohorts. And really, we're going to be looking the first week, thinking about self-awareness, radical self-awareness, borrowing in the second week some tools from improv that really help us understand how we can embrace the yes and in ourselves and in others around us. Excellent. It's almost like being accepting of the inner and outer diversity. And then moving the third week to understanding strategically, like, what is this context I work in? What is this company or organization I work in, or perhaps where I'm aspiring to work? And how do I take what I've learned in these previous weeks and apply it to this so that I can step forward, maybe to the next leadership level, or to become a more inclusive leader in the role I'm in right now. So that's our first cohort starts next Friday, and we have a few more kicking off in February as well. And we also have a longer 12-week program, Future Forward, for intentional leaders, and that's much more intense version of that, I'd say, and really aimed at senior to executive leaders.
Fantastic. So tell us, where can people go and sign up, get more information about how to do that?
www.inclusiveleadershipstudio.com is the place to go. You can also look us up on LinkedIn. You can look up Inclusive Leadership Studio, or myself, Dr. Gena. That's Gena with an E, Chang Campbell. I'm the only one. So once you spell it with the E, you'll find me for sure.
You absolutely will. Dr. Gena, it's always a pleasure talking to you.
You too,
I learned
Nikki.
so
Thank
much.
you.
And I look forward to joining your upcoming event.
Thank you.
In February. So all the best to you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me,
Dr. Gena Chang Campbell. Thank you again. Reach out to her on social media. We'll be right back.